now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. One of my viewers wanted to know why the silent generation looked up to and related to bad boys like James Dean and Elvis Presley. Well, when it comes to these so-called bad boys like James Dean and Elvis Presley, they were not really bad boys, but socially engineered constructs created by institutions like corporate America, Madison Avenue, and Hollywood to simulate the rebellion so that people could go out here and become consumers. Now, when it came to this whole concept of the bad boy was basically a social construct created by Madison Avenue and Hollywood to undermine the authority of the father and the mother inside of the home of the American family. Now, the American family basically was controlled by the father and the mother during the time of the silent generation, and the father was considered to be the ultimate authority in that home, and he basically controlled the dollars inside of that home and how those dollars were spent. So when it came to Madison Avenue, Hollywood, and corporate America, they really could not really get access to the father's dollars, so they sought to get access to the dollars of younger people. And as they sought to get the access to the dollars of younger people, what Madison Avenue, Hollywood, and big business looked to do was socially engineer a customer, and socially engineer a customer they could go out here and control. Now, before the time of the 1950s, there was no such thing as a teenager. No, during the times of the agrarian economy, people who were aged anywhere from 13 to 21 years old were usually considered to be youths, and in some parts of the country, people as old as 30 years old were considered to be youths. This is why people from the ages of 13 to about 30 years old used to be called boys and girls, and called boys and girls because they did not have the mental or emotional maturity to take on the responsibility of adults. And because they didn't have the ability to take on the responsibility of adults as related to the patriarchal families of the agrarian economy and even in the Industrial Revolution, this is where this group of young people basically looked to their fathers and their mothers for guidance as they looked to work their way up to becoming established. However, what happened is that big business, Madison Avenue, and Hollywood saw this group of young people as a group that they could go out here and exploit to be able to socially engineer into becoming a group of consumers they could go out here and get to buy into their whole economy by getting them to buy into an idea about themselves, and that idea about themselves was called the teenager. Now, the teenager was a social construct of the 1940s, and it was a social construct designed to go out here and give these youth a direction so that corporate America could go out here and control the youth and steer the youth down a direction to going out here and being perfect consumers. And this is what was done during the time of the silent generation. They wanted to steer the youth on a road to being this ideal consumer that could go out here and buy all of their products and buy all of the by buying into their ideas, buy into buying products, and be this consumer that would go out here and not follow the lead of their parents, but go in a completely different direction. It's very similar to what happened during the Roaring '20s, where we saw the rise of the flapper, again, a rebellious woman who basically was out here not looking to follow the lead of her father, but looking to go out here and run the streets and be with people like gangsters and other forms of criminals. But what they wanted to do in the case of the bad boy was socially engineer an idea of a man and a social construct of a man that would be someone who wouldn't be out here involved with organized crime, but would be somebody who would be a established idea of rebellion that many of those in big business, Madison Avenue and Hollywood could control. So what this whole idea is of this bad boy, again, an individual that is basically a social construct who was made up in a corporate boardroom and a Hollywood movie studio as, again, an authorized ideal of rebellion. And this authorized ideal of rebellion, which was not really a bad boy, but basically a corporate tool, this bad boy basically was designed to basically give these teenagers somebody to go out here and follow, somebody to follow as related to defying the authority of their parents, defy the authority of their parents, but go out here and be in a form of rebellion that would be considered socially acceptable to big business, Madison Avenue and Hollywood. And sadly, many in the silent generation didn't know how they were being manipulated by this media because they didn't understand that media wasn't just entertainment, but it was a form of programming. It was a form of programming an idea in people's minds, programming an idea in people's minds of how to rebel in a way that was authorized by big business, Madison Avenue and Hollywood. Go out here and rebel in a way that was defiant of the parents, but would be socially acceptable to big business because it wasn't challenging its institutions, but going out here and allowing them to profit at the expense of the ignorance of this youth. And as this youth basically bought into the idea of the teenager and bought into the idea of the teenager instead of being a youth, because a youth was basically a young person who was under the leadership of older men like their fathers and older males in the community and older females in the community, and they learned the moral position of as related to God and related to God's order. What they wanted to do was create this individual who again would be rebelling and looking to follow the standards of big business as related to rebellion. And as they followed the standards of rebellion as related to big business, they would buy into the idea of the teenager. And as they bought into the idea of the teenager, they bought into the ideas and concepts of the teenager, such as dating, such as buying clothes similar to the bad boys, such as James Dean and Elvis Presley, like the leather jacket, which is a symbol of rebellion, the blue jeans, and the sneakers. All of this was designed to make it look like these kids were again going against the standards of their parents, where the kids used to dress up in slacks and shirts and suits sometimes because they wanted to again look like they were on the road to taking adult responsibility. But the teenager was all about going against the whole grain of adult responsibility and basically putting the kids who thought they were on a road to rebellion, as they thought they were on this road to rebellion, they were basically out here again participating in corporate sanctioned rebellion that was not about rebelling against the system, but following right down the road that the system wanted them to follow, following down the road that the system wanted them to follow, because their ultimate goal was to make these people in the silent generation a group of consumers, make them a group of consumers who again thought they were playing by the rule against the rules, but were ironically playing right with the rules in going out here and buying the sanctioned image stuff for that would allow them to appear to be socially acceptable as related to rebellion. And again, they put these images out there, and sadly many people bought into these images of these rebellious characters like James Dean and Elvis Presley, and bought into that brand sponsored rebellion Meanwhile, ironically, the same people would not go out here and rebel against a government that was basically participating in anti black racism and enforcing policies like Jim Crow on black people. No, what these people did was go out here and again look to be the so called bad boy or the so called rebellious image. But that rebellious image, again, was something designed by big business, Madison Avenue advertisers and Hollywood movie studios to sell people on a social construct of a teenager who was the bad boy. And again, they chose young people because young people were very vulnerable and influential as related to these ideas and these images, and they knew they couldn't sell this to older, more established men and women who were 30 years old, because once a person turns 25 and starts getting a sense of self, you cannot really influence or manipulate that person into buying into your programming because they've basically been taught the values by their parents. And this is one of the things that left the generation of the silent generation vulnerable, because their parents basically were out here working, and as they were working with their kids up to a point, but a lot of times when they entered into adolescence, again, they were listening to a lot of this media, and again, this media influenced them to believe that, oh, this concept of a teenager was something they could be, something they could aspire to. They didn't have to be like their father. And again, like the flapper of the 1920s, they bought into this idea because they wanted to, again, be this social construct. They thought this would make them more socially acceptable. They thought this would, again, elevate their social status. And a lot of young people bought into the idea of the bad boy. Again, he's a state-sanctioned way of rebellion. He's not really going against the rules. No, the bad boys like James Dean were basically Hollywood tools, and guys like Elvis Presley were bought and paid for. They usually did what the studios told them. They usually did whatever the studio wanted them to do. And again, they did not go out here and actually participate in any real rebellion, because participating in real rebellion would mean going out here and standing up for people, black people, and standing up for the rights of black people. And Elvis Presley didn't do much for black people except make racist statements. And James Dean, basically, he didn't really do anything for black people. Now, had these celebrities gone out here and stood at the side of black people during the civil rights movement, that would have been considered real rebellion. But no, these Hollywood tools basically made a lot of white folks and non-blacks feel comfortable about the idea of rebellion, made them feel about the ideal of going against the grain, made people feel like, oh, this guy is really a bad boy, but he's not doing anything bad at all. No, he's going out here participating in state-sanctioned rebellion, similar to what happens in the black community today with the so-called gangster rappers of the 1990s. The gangster rapper was basically a state-sanctioned social construct as related to how these institutions wanted to see black people, because black people were taking control of our own narrative. We had people like Bill Cosby showing you a more balanced picture of black people, and many of those in Hollywood, Madison Avenue, and corporate America, which evolved out of big business, decided to go out here and create the concept of the thug and the gangsta, state-sponsored versions of bad boys. Again, a repackaging of the bad boy. And again, a lot of people basically fell for this whole narrative, not understanding that these bad boys really aren't bad. They're just basically tools, because again, true rebellion is somebody who goes against the entire system of white supremacy and speaks against the system of white supremacy. And these guys don't go out here and speak against anything, whether it be James Dean or Elvis Presley. Basically, Elvis Presley was a racist. James Dean basically was in the closet, and again, staying silent because he didn't want to alienate many of the people he worked for as related to those movie studios. And the same thing goes on with other so-called rebellious people like Ice Cube and the NWA, and even some of these drill rappers. Many of these people basically do whatever their paymasters tell them. And the whole idea of rebellion in and of itself is not really rebellion. No, it's basically they look to market a narrative to a generation, market a narrative of so called going against the rules that ironically is right in line with the rules of white supremacy as related to their business, because what they want to do is get you to be a consumer, buying into their ideas, buying into their narratives, buying into their whole ideas of what they want you to fit, boxes they want you to fit into, because this is all about getting you to become spellbound. And as you become spellbound, what they want you to do is get spellbound by these social constructs like the idea of the teenager, the idea of the bad boy, and look to fit yourself into these boxes to be accepted into society. And as you fit yourself into these boxes, they can go out here and make the perfect consumer out of you as you continue to buy into these ideas of manufactured rebellion. And as you buy into these concepts of manufactured rebellion, you basically wind up making a God out of these ideas. And instead of you following God and following down God's road to salvation, you wind up becoming spiritually lost. And as you become spiritually lost, what happens to most people, again, they buy into these constructs. And again, these constructs are not about real freedom, but taking away your freedom, because what women do is think, oh, I can fix the bad boy as related to the covert contract, and guys buy into the idea of the bad boy never really being themselves. So the whole idea of that happened as related to the bad boy, again, women will sit there and look up to the bad boy and relate to the bad boy, seeing somebody that, again, goes against the grain of their fathers and think, oh, I can change him into my father. No, you cannot change this man into what he never was. No, a person is as is, and that's what a girl who is under a father understands. She understands this man will never be like my father because he is his own person. And again, he comes from dysfunction because he's buying into this idea. And a guy who buys into the whole idea of a bad boy never really was bad, but was a beta male looking to, again, follow the lead, looking for a gimmick that would get him the attention of women, because he usually doesn't have his own personality, his own charisma, or his own voice. And because he doesn't have those things of himself, he looks to people like James Dean and Elvis Presley to craft this bad boy image, a bad boy image that basically was made up in a corporate boardroom, similar to the way that a gangster's image as related to the black community in the 1990s was made up in a corporate boardroom. A lot of these ideas that we get about ourselves basically were made up by guys in corporate suits that basically, again, ironically conform to the standards of white supremacy, and again, look to keep you on a road to never being who God wants you to be and live the abundant life that God wants you to have. No, what they want to do is keep you going, have you buy into these false personas and these ideas of self that are not real, get you to buy into these ideas of self that are non-existent, and again, ideas made up to fit a movie or a TV show. That's what James Dean and Elvis Presley were. They were manufactured by corporate America into being what people wanted them to sell to. Again, they wanted to sell to the girls as a guy who would be the ideal as related to being a guy who, again, would look like an alpha male, but was really a beta male because he did everything that his corporate masters tell him, and get those girls to follow down the road of these guys in the effort to get them to spend their money, get them to spend the money that they were working at their jobs to get merchandise from these guys and to get with these kind of guys, and get these guys to buy into the idea of being this kind of guy. And again, this is all about selling you a construct, selling you a dream. And many people never really got it as part of the silent generation, that this was all about selling you the idea of rebellion. Again, sanctioned rebellion that went along with their rules, because actual rebellion would be, again, fighting to support black people as related to their civil rights. That was actual rebellion. And sadly, nobody did that until corporate America looked to go out here and participate in integration to make themselves more profits. And again, this is what the whole idea of America is as related to things. Again, as related to the bad boy. The bad boy isn't bad. No, the bad boy basically is a tool to manipulate the minds of people into believing that they are rebellion, when in actuality what they're doing is basically following the lead of the corporate bosses, who basically came up with this idea of a bad boy because it would be easier to make money trying to manipulate people into believing they were participating in rebellion when they were actually participating in compliance. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for a minimum of $15 to the PayPal or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if I know something about that subject, I'll make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, whether it be my fiction like the ISIS series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy like my novel Spellbound, which goes in depth on the spellbound mindset and how people fit themselves into boxes to become acceptable to others instead of being themselves, you can find all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like, and that's all I have to say for this video, you can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback at e-readers, ISIS, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.